Thank you for joining us for the 2025 Football Online Rules module. My name is Jason Nickleby and I am the Director of the Officiating Program with the League. There are a number of items to cover and we appreciate your diligence and patience as we prepare for a season in a few short weeks. We will now cover some general information for football before moving on to the rules changes for 2025. We will also cover the editorial changes and the points of emphasis from the NFHS, as well as league points of emphasis and information that is specific to football in Minnesota. We will then review several administrative items before concluding this module. This is a reminder that air quality information was put into the league's policy last year, and it is only a recommendation. Even if levels are really high and the suggestion or recommendation is that the contest not be played, that is up to the host school to determine. So again, this is a recommendation, but our schools, coaches especially, should review air quality information as well as all weather-related items in our policy. We have had a significant number of weather and lightning related delays, postponements, and cancellations over the last several years. This is in addition to air quality or heat or cold issues as well. Just a reminder on the policy and who's responsible for what. So prior to the start of the game, the host school is responsible for determining whether or not the conditions present a threat to safety of the participants, and they will determine whether or not the contest will begin. Once the game starts, the officials have the authority to postpone or suspend a contest due to unsafe weather conditions. If the officials make that decision, that may not be overruled by anyone. If we have school officials that are there, they also can do that. So we're talking AD, principal, superintendent. If they are on site, they can also suspend a contest, and that decision cannot be overruled. Once we have made the decision to suspend the contest, the 30-minute clock begins at that point. The 30-minute clock must go all the way to 0 before we resume the contest. And if we see lightning, hear thunder again, that 30-minute clock starts over. So just a note that that 30-minute clock cannot be interrupted, it cannot be stopped. It has to go from 30 all the way down to 0. Make sure that we're consulting with coaches, administrators, on-site medical professionals, the referee, on making a decision on whether we will continue the contest that evening or if we need to move the contest to a different day. So make sure we're communicating that, and we need to err on the side of safety. And if we see any lightning anywhere or hear thunder, then it's close enough, and we need to stop the contest for a minimum of 30 minutes at that point. As a reminder, if a coach, parent, or other concerned party has an eligibility question, such as chemical or behavior issues, should direct those questions to the activities director. Even if a football player is ineligible, the officials are not ruling on bylaw or policy violations, and all inquiries should be directed to the activities director of the school involved. We are looking to continue with the concept of a pregame administrative and medical timeout during the 2025 season. This meeting will take place approximately 10 minutes before the contest begins or as schedules allow, and will hopefully be led by a site administrator. The meeting will cover sportsmanship, what to do with a challenging situation such as an unruly spectator or other disruption, as well as medical emergency planning. We hope this meeting will get administrators, coaches, and officials on the same page going into their respective contest. Just a note that this particular meeting is not a required piece, but it is strongly recommended that schools cover this information with all of the coaches, all of the officials, medical professionals on site, and any other administration folks that are assisting with the um, administration of the game. Again, not required, but certainly best practice. And note that this would not take the place of the pregame meeting between the referee or the crew and the coach. So that still needs to take place, but we're recommending that in addition, we cover this stuff like where's the AAD, who's calling 911 if we need to do that. If there's inclement weather, where are the teams going? Where are the officials going? Um, all those kinds of things that if we can cover it out front before the contest for a couple minutes, if something happens that's catastrophic or unusual or any of those things, we'll be on top of it. So really hoping that schools consider this year. And referees, when you check in for your assignments, we recommend that you inquire with the school if they are having a pre-contest timeout, and if so, when and where, so that you can be there. It is never acceptable for a coach to be ejected from a contest. You are responsible for modeling respectful behaviors at all times. Should a coach be ejected from a contest, they are ineligible to coach or play the remainder of games scheduled for that day and must sit out the next date after the date of the offense. This suspension must be enforced whether or not the school has received an ejection report. This is the responsibility of the head coach to notify their activities director. A violation of this rule results in a forfeit. A second ejection in the same season results in a 4-game suspension. Ejections may not be appealed. As you can see in the slide, a coach that has been suspended may not have access to the locker room, be seated or spectate in an area near the bench, or ride the bus to or from the contest. Obviously, if a coach is ejected from a visiting contest, they are allowed to ride the bus back to their school. However, they must vacate the playing area if they are ejected during the contest. The suspended piece of this, where you may not have access to the locker room or be in the bench area or ride the bus to or from the contest, is for the next game when you are suspended after the ejection. We don't have many ejections in Minnesota. However, we do have several situations where coaches cross the line and go on to the playing surface to argue calls, use profanity, and so forth. And again, we need to model the best behavior for our players primarily, but also for our spectators. If coaches are respectful and working with the officials well, then typically players and spectators follow suit. When coaches have lost control of their emotions, then we also see players and spectators do the same. So coaches, please work with officials, and officials are told to use respectful communication and work with you as well. But please model respectful behavior, work with the officials, and if we do that, we're going to have a great season. Athletes have similar consequences as coaches when they are ejected from a contest. They are ineligible to play in any game scheduled for the remainder of that day and must sit out the next contest that occurs after the date of the offense. This suspension must be enforced again whether or not your school has received an ejection report. The head coach is responsible for ensuring compliance with this bylaw. A violation of this rule results in a forfeit. A second ejection in the same season results in a 4-game suspension. Ejections may not be appealed. An athlete that is suspended during the regular season may travel with the team and occupy the bench area, but may not be in uniform. If an athlete is ejected from a game, whether it's regular season or postseason, they must stay in the bench area under the supervision of a coach. If they choose to leave the bench area on their own with a coach that is supervising them, that's up to them. But by rule, they are required to stay in the bench area under the supervision of a coach if they are ejected. Then in the next game, when they are suspended, then they may travel with the team and be in the bench area, but they can't be in uniform. If we have an ejection during the postseason and the player is thinking about coming to the next game, they may not be in uniform, they may not occupy the bench area, and they may not participate in the award ceremony or receive awards. That's an important distinction between ejections in the regular season as well as the postseason. So we've told officials and we're telling coaches that officials need to be diligent and work hard to only eject when necessary. But when behaviors or contact rises to the level of ejection, the expectation is that officials will apply NFHS rules appropriately and eject as necessary. We will now cover the rules changes for the NFHS for the 2025 season. Beginning in 2026, tooth and mouth protectors may not include anything on them that is a health or risk issue and can pose a danger to themselves or other players. So, in short, they cannot have protrusions, they cannot have attachments, other adornments beginning next year. Um, we're certainly encouraging coaches to work with their players to limit their use this year. However, they would be legal this year, but beginning next year, anything with an attachment, an adornment, something else on them, those would not be legal for use beginning next season. Again, beginning next year, if a tooth and mouth protector has something on it that does not serve a purpose or function in protecting the teeth or mouth, that would be illegal. You see on this particular um, slide, you have a chain with a letter on it. You saw on the previous slide it had a kind of a fan or windmill, a baby nook, all those kinds of things, protrusion, attachments. Again, all of those types of items would be illegal on tooth and mouth protectors beginning in 2026. On this slide, you see several examples of legal tooth and mouth protectors. These will be legal this year and will be legal again next year and into the future unless the rule were to change. But at this point, these will be legal. The reason that the second, third, and fourth pictures are legal is because they are either sublimated or they are a sticker that's attached to the mouth protector. Um, that is totally legal because it's not protruding and it's not an attachment that is sticking out or that could cause a danger to the player or their opponent. So these are legal this year and next year as well. And we would encourage that players begin to use mouth and tooth protectors that meet the rule for 2026, even for this fall. Beginning in 2027, arm sleeves, whether they're attached to a shirt or a separate standalone piece, if they're manufactured to enhance contact with the football or the opponent, they must meet SFIA specifications at the time of manufacture. And again, this is for 2027, and we just want coaches to work with players and make them aware of this rule change for 2 years from now, so that we're not purchasing um, undershirts or sleeves that would not meet the specifications of SFIA. Again, in 2027, if a shirt or sleeve is manufactured to enhance contact with the football or an opponent, it must have a seal from the SFIA indicating that it meets the specifications by rule. So um, officials and coaches just need to be aware of this, a change for 2027. And once we get to 2027, we'll need to make sure that sleeves are meeting this specification. And again, it is only for sleeves that are manufactured to enhance contact with the football. If they're not manufactured that way, then they are not required to have this seal. Coaches or those in the bench area may now use fixed electronic signs with no audio component to signal those on the field, so to players on the field. So you see on the slide that it has 7-64, and that's a play call for that particular team. Totally fine, provided that it doesn't move and that it doesn't have any audio component to it. In the past, electronic signage, whether it was fixed or moving, was not legal. Beginning this year, fixed electronic signs are permitted for use to communicate with players on the field from the sideline. Scrolling graphics, video footage, as well as audio communications are all examples of illegal equipment if this were a between the 9-yard mark conference. So this is a conference during a timeout when the coach or one of the coaches goes out to meet with the players in the middle of the field. Um, Coaches can still go out there and meet with them, but they would not be able to use scrolling graphics or video footage or audio components during that conference. If the conference is outside of the 9-yard marks, then coaches could use these things. So if it's near the sideline, then coaches could use that during a timeout. But during the game or during a between the 9-yard mark conference, only static or still frame electronic communication would be allowed with no audio component. We were seeing a number of examples of this change in many sports, including in Minnesota, where we had players affixing cameras or audio recording devices to their uniform or equipment. So beginning this year, this would be illegal in football. Players cannot attach any video or audio component device to their equipment or to their uniform. And we are also um, stating that officials cannot do this either. So um, we've seen that across the country. And just to be on the same page and be consistent, players and officials that are on the field of play cannot attach any video camera or microphone device to their uniform or equipment. Our substantial rules change for this year is the forward fumble out of bounds uh, rule and an exception. So if we have a ball that is fumbled and goes out of bounds in the field of play between the goal lines, it will be returned to the spot of the fumble. In that case, the play clock will go to 40 seconds, just like any other play, and will start immediately. And then the referee will start the game clock on the ready for play as soon as the umpire has the ball, or if clock is a factor, as soon as everyone is in position to officiate. So that's a substantial change for this year. Again, a fumble in the field of play that goes out of bounds between the goal lines will be returned to the spot of the fumble and will put the ball in play from that point. In this situation, we have a fumble in the field of play that ultimately goes into Team B's end zone and is ruled out of bounds at that point. In this case, the ball is not returned to the spot of the fumble, and because it did not go out of bounds between the goal lines, and as a result, it would be a touchback. This is the same as it's always been. This is not a change. But just remember that if we have a fumble from the field of play that goes into Team B's end zone and out of bounds, would not be returned to the spot of the fumble. That is a touchback. In this example, Team A fumbles at the 10-yard line going in and then ends up going out of bounds backwards. So in this case, it goes out of bounds at the 12-yard line. In that case, we will not bring it to the spot of the fumble because it did not go out of bounds in advance of the spot of the fumble. So any fumble that goes out of bounds behind the spot of the fumble will be ruled dead there and it will be put in play at that spot as well. In this case, 40-second play clock as well, but the game clock will not be started until the snap. So do not bring it back to the spot of the fumble in this situation. And this is the same as what it's always been relative to fumbles going out of bounds behind the spot of the fumble. In this situation, Team A's quarterback, A1, pitches the ball to the running back, A2, who does not catch it, muffs the ball, and then it subsequently goes out of bounds at the 3-yard line. This will be handled the exact same way that it always has. We will put the ball in play at the 3-yard line, 40-second play clock, and the game clock will start on the snap. This is not a fumble, this is a muffed backwards pass. So the only change this year is relative to fumbles that go out of bounds between the goal lines in advance of the spot of the fumble. In this case, this is not a fumble, so we're going to handle it exactly the way that we always have. We'll put the ball in play at the 3-yard line, but if this ball were to go out of bounds in the end zone, it would be a safety because Team A is responsible for the ball being there, and when it goes out of bounds, they put it there, therefore it's a safety. And again, that is not a change from the past. In this situation, we have a play where the ball carrier from Team A is responsible for the ball being in the end zone. So for example, Team A snaps from the 3-yard line. The quarterback gets the snap and rolls out to his right, is in the end zone, and then gets hit and fumbles, and it goes out of bounds at the 3-yard line. Because the fumble went out of bounds between the goal lines in advance of the spot of the fumble, this will be brought back to the spot of the fumble. And in this case, because Team A put the ball in their end zone, is responsible for it being there, this will be a safety. There are exceptions to this with momentum, and that would be applied when we have a pass that's intercepted, we have a fumble that is intercepted or recovered by the opponent, or a kick is caught or recovered. Those would provide for momentum exceptions, and in that case, we would not have a safety. So I'll give you a kick example. We have a kick that on the run, the receiver gets control of the kick at the 3, ends up in the end zone, subsequently gets hit, fumbles, goes out of bounds at the 3. In that case, we will put it at the 3-yard line because of the momentum exception. Probably a better example is, let's say the ball went out of bounds at the 5. We'll put the ball in play at the 3 because that is where momentum exception would be applied. But the more typical example is this situation where Team A puts the ball in their end zone by running it in there on purpose without momentum, gets hit, fumbles, goes out of bounds in the field of play. In that case, brought back to the spot of the fumble, and it will be a safety. In this situation, we have a forward fumble out of bounds by Team B that goes out of bounds between the goal lines following a change of possession. So we have a fumble by A. It's recovered by B in the end zone. So A is responsible for the ball being in the end zone. B recovers it. They're running around in the end zone. He gets hit, fumbles. It goes out of bounds at the 3-yard line. Because it is a fumble that went out of bounds between the goal lines in advance of the spot of the fumble, it will be brought back to the spot of the fumble. And in this case, the spot of the fumble is the end zone. Team A is responsible for it being there, or the opponent is responsible for it being there. So this will be a touchback. In the past, we would have just put the ball in play at the 3-yard line for Team B and move forward. But because this is a fumble that went out of bounds in advance of the spot of the fumble, and the opponent is responsible for the ball being in the end zone, we will bring it back to the spot of the fumble, and it will be a touchback. There were revisions to the 9-6 penalty as well as elimination of 10-4-4B to clarify and standardize penalty enforcement with regards to illegal participation fouls. The penalty for all illegal participation fouls has been standardized as 15 yards, and it is a live ball basic spot enforcement. There were situations where illegal participation fouls would either need to be declined or would allow for an advantage by the team that was committing the participation foul. So an example of this would be illegal participation by the offense, and it's 30 yards downfield from the previous spot. In the past, there were many instances where this would be enforced from that spot, and now due to the standardization of the penalty and the enforcement will be enforced from the basic spot, which in the case of a loose ball play on a pass would be enforced from the previous spot. We will now discuss the editorial adjustments from the NFHS for the 2025 season. An adjustment was made to 151 to allow for a school mascot to be considered an allowable adornment to a jersey. This is in addition to the number, school's nickname, school logo, or their name and player name. A loose ball play was further clarified to be considered action during a free kick or scrimmage kick other than post-scrimmage kick fouls as defined in 216.2H. An adjustment was also made for loose ball plays relative to penalty enforcement, and this is defined in 233.1 A, B, C, and D, and a running play defined as action with respect to Rule 233.2. This is a pretty significant editorial change. It's not a rules change, but this entire rules piece was moved from definitions in Rule 2 to the contact rule in Rule 943. This rule indicates that no player or non-player shall initiate forceful contact against a defenseless receiver that is not either incidental contact as a result of playing the ball, initiated with open hands, or an attempt to tackle by wrapping the arms around the receiver. And this would include a defensive back as well. If they're trying to make a play on the ball, they cannot be contacted with force unless it is incidental contact as a result of making a play on the ball. That contact is initiated with open hands or an attempt to wrap. So in short, no change from last year, just moving it from one place to another in the rules book. And this is a reminder that if a receiver or defensive back is trying to make a play on the ball, they cannot be contacted with force unless it is incidental because both players are playing the ball, or that contact is initiated with open hands or a wrap-up tackle. Here is one slide with the other editorial changes that were made to the rules book, and we encourage you to review these rules and their changes at your convenience. And here is the last slide of editorial changes for the 2025 season. Again, review the changes from last year and this year in the rules book. All changes, whether it is a rules change or editorial change, should be grayed out in the rules book, and we encourage you to review these at your convenience. The following slides will discuss rules reminders from the NFHS that are key changes or points of emphasis from the past few years. Home team jerseys must be the same dark color that clearly contrasts to white. We will discuss uniform expectations in another slide, but it's just a reminder that the home team must wear a dark jersey. Further, this change was made last year, and it is a requirement that home teams must have a dark jersey, and the team or teammates must all wear a dark color that is similar or the same, and it clearly contrasts to white. We'll now discuss the NFHS football points of emphasis for this season. The following slides will discuss the points of emphasis from the NFHS, and those include illegal and improperly worn player equipment, sportsmanship, and defenseless player and targeting. To support the safety of all participants, players must wear equipment and uniforms that are properly fitted and worn as intended by the manufacturer. We are really encouraging coaches to visit with your players prior to the season, prior to the games, about the importance of wearing equipment and uniform pieces the way that they are manufactured and intended. This includes knee pads, this includes shoulder pads, helmets, mouth and tooth protectors, visors, towels, all those pieces. Um, Please visit with your players about what is expected. We do have a uniform poster to assist with proper and legal equipment, and we need officials to work with coaches to make sure that players are dressed and wearing equipment appropriately during games. This slide has examples of illegal equipment that players should not be utilizing during games. And this includes jewelry, tinted visors, um, bands that are worn around the arm, neck, or legs, non-compliant eye shade, as well as towels that do not conform to the rules. So again, coaches are really encouraging you to review the uniform and equipment rules with your players prior to games. The officials really do not want to have to engage with players or coaches about this issue. We just want to play football and we don't want to mess around with these kind of things once we get to games. So it would be appreciated if this is addressed prior to games beginning and during pregame as well. So we have several slides on this issue later in this presentation, and we have had this in presentations for many years. At least 10 years we've had slides on this. Um, Coaches and players were not very good at adhering to this expectation. I realize that the college level doesn't do us any favors. Kids are seeing that and they want to emulate, the players that they see on Saturdays, and that's just not the expectation at the high school level. We need to wear equipment appropriately and the way that we're supposed to. And officials, we need to take care of business as it relates to addressing this. Now, there's a difference between illegal and improperly worn equipment or uniform and equipment or apparel that becomes illegal through play. So in the situations on the slide, you see that the equipment or the apparel is already illegal before we even play that particular down. Now, if the player's knee pads or pants or mouth guard or other things come off or move up their leg or those kinds of things during the play, that is becoming illegal through play, and that is not a situation where the official should direct the player to leave the game, but they should ask the player to fix it and make it legal. If they do not, then they do need to leave the game until they make their equipment or apparel legal. Unsportsmanlike conduct is incompatible with the values of education-based athletics. As unsporting acts increase at the college and professional levels, all stakeholders must work together to ensure that high school football embodies the highest principles of sportsmanship and fundamental ethics of competition. High school football is a game of extreme emotion played by exceptionally talented teenagers. Game officials should not be overly technical in applying the rules, but they should always be aware of conduct that does not exemplify sportsmanship. In determining whether an action rises to the level of a foul, game officials should allow for brief, spontaneous emotional reactions at the end of the play, but should penalize acts that are prolonged, choreographed, or directed at an opponent or an official. The following actions are unsportsmanlike conduct that should be penalized without warning. Demonstrations of violence such as brandishing guns and throat slashes, rehearsed poses, gestures with sexual connotations, dunking the ball over the crossbar, removal of the helmet to celebrate or protest, as well as somersaults or flips and spiking or spinning the ball. Any act that is clearly intended to taunt, demean, or show disrespect to an opponent or the officials should be penalized. As high school football coaches and officials, we view high school football as something that is extremely important to all of us, and we want to see it continue and flourish. The main way we can do that is to be on top of safety related fouls. We also need to be aware of defenseless players who are players that, because of their physical position and focus of concentration, they are especially vulnerable to injury. This player will remain defenseless until that player's physical position and focus of concentration allows the player to have a chance to protect themselves or at the very least brace for contact. So you see some examples of these types of plays on this slide. And coaches, we need to work with our players on trying to limit or avoid these types of contact. And officials, when you see these types of contact on the field, we need to have a flag on the ground. And when in doubt on safety related fouls, we are going to have a flag for a personal foul. And we especially need to be on top of targeting. Reminder Targeting is not an automatic disqualification, but we do need to be on top of safety related fouls. Concussions are a major issue in all sports, but particularly in football. So, as coaches and officials, we need to be on top of management of concussions. If officials believe that a player is exhibiting symptoms, they do need to refer that player to the coach and the appropriate healthcare provider to be evaluated. Officials are not making determinations of a concussion, they're merely referring that athlete to the coach and the appropriate healthcare professional to be evaluated. We already talked about this topic earlier, but just an awareness that in the rules book there are additional guidelines and information relative to addressing lightning or thunder disturbances during games. The NFHS has also developed heat acclimatization and heat illness prevention position statements that are available in the rules book and on the respective pages for coaches and officials. This is a really important piece. This this situation is completely preventable as far as heat illness and death, yet every year we continue to see athletes that pass away during practice, during games, all because we did not follow proper heat acclimatization or illness prevention standards. So, um, coaches, this is a big piece for practice to make sure that we're on top of heat illness prevention. And then officials during games, we need to take water breaks as necessary to help with this, and you do not need anyone's permission to do that. Go ahead, stop the game, and give water breaks as needed. So make sure you're aware of the expectations relative to heat acclimatization and heat illness prevention. Perhaps the most important part of the module is the Minnesota points of emphasis, and many of these things are points of emphasis at the national level as well. But we continue to see areas that we need to have growth and improvement in, especially evolving around um, player safety. So we need to be on top of that, diligent on that. We've made progress for sure, but there's still area of growth and improvement that we need to see. And this is going to take the collective work of coaches and officials to make this happen. So coaches teaching safer techniques, officials call fouls when they happen, especially safety related fouls. Um, and players will adjust. They have done a really good job of adjusting to targeting, even though we still need to emphasize that. We've gotten better at it, but we need to continue to coach it. We need to continue to officiate it, and then players will adjust and will play the game in a safer manner. So, again, always a need to improve. Always need to look at safety relative to targeting and excessive and unnecessary contact. That's important for the continued health of high school football, which we all love. That's why we're here to coach and play it and officiate it, because it's a great game and it's given so much to all of us. And the only way we're going to protect that is by making sure that we make this game as safe as we can by coaching it the safest way, playing it the safest way, and officiating it um, to the letter of the rule when we're talking about safety related fouls. So this slide has been an emphasis for quite a while, and I would say that we have done a really good job as coaches and officials of really reducing the amount of targeting that we see in our game. And we need players to see what they hit, to not deliver, take aim, and forcibly contact players in the head and neck area, not just for the protection of the player that's being hit, but for the one that's delivering the blow as well. So remember that targeting does not have to involve a launch. It could. That's an indicator that we could potentially have targeting. Um, but as long as we have a player that's taking aim and delivering that contact, that punishing blow to the head or neck area, we are going to have a targeting foul. And remember, it does not have to be made with the helmet. Helmet to helmet is nowhere to be found in the rules book. Can it be a foul when the helmet's hit? Yes, it can. Um, but we could have cases where there's incidental contact it rides up, etc. So not all helmet to helmet contact is a foul, but when they take aim and initiate that contact with the head or neck area using forearm, knee, shoulder, or helmet, those kinds of things, then we're going to have a targeting foul. And it's not an automatic ejection in high school. It's 15 yards, but if it's flagrant, completely unnecessary, didn't need to happen, then we need to consider ejection in that case. And we just need to lower our target zone. We need to use wrap up technique when it comes to tackling to really avoid targeting fouls. And remember that targeting is only what the player did and what ultimately occurred. It's not what they meant to do or they thought they were going to do something, because we hear that all the time, that I didn't mean to do that. Well, ultimately you took aim and you initiated contact, forceful contact in the head or neck area. That's a targeting foul. And we especially see that when offensive players in particular go low because they're going to the ground, they're sliding, those kinds of things. That does not absolve the defensive player or the player that's delivering the blow from delivering that hit legally. So again, we're doing a great job as coaches and players of adjusting, and officials are much better at recognizing these fouls and calling them, but we need to continue our emphasis and diligence as it relates to player safety and targeting. Coaches must also continue to work with their players, and they have, about the risks of unnecessary and excessive contact, regardless of whether or not the contact occurs during a legal block or tackle. So we need to instruct our players to avoid that kind of contact. Really stress that in practice and at games. And officials, we need to call the fouls when this kind of thing happens. So um, again, taking aim on opponents who are not aware of impending contact, so they're defenseless by rule. They're especially vulnerable to injury, and if we're going to have forceful contact against them, it needs to be a foul. Blindside blocks, targeting, um, you know, roughing the passer, those kinds of fouls need to be called. We need to try to coach that out of the game, and players need to adjust so that we can have the safest game that we possibly can have. Officials need to be aware of blindside blocks, peel back blocks, airborne receivers attempting to secure the ball, and other situations where players are defenseless, as these are dangerous contact type situations. Players leaving their feet with a launch or crouching and thrusting into an opponent to initiate forceful contact with defenseless players should be penalized immediately. Situations where there is unnecessary or excessive contact, we must also consider ejection in those situations. Officials, if there's any doubt that this foul occurred, we need to call the foul and enforce a 15-yard penalty. Again, targeting is not an automatic ejection, but if it fits the buckets of unnecessary and excessive and targeting, we need to consider ejection in that case. The situation with contact to a defenseless receiver, we talked about that on a previous slide. We have not done a very good job of officiating that play. We also need to coach it a little bit better, that again, defenseless receivers can only be contacted with force using open hands or a wrap up tackle. Any forceful contact that does not meet either one of those definitions in outside of incidental contact is a foul. And again, when in doubt, we need to put a flag on the ground in these situations. I would say this slide can probably go away in another year because coaches and players have done an outstanding job of adjusting to this. This used to be commonplace, this kind of philosophy that, well, we didn't hear a whistle, so we're just going to keep hitting people. And again, coaches and players have done an awesome job of adjusting to this. We know when the play's over. When the play's over, whether you hear a whistle or not, the play's over, and we're not going to keep hitting people and delivering huge blocks, especially cleaning up the pile or coming in and blowing up the runner who's already being held up by other defensive players, are just some examples. On many plays, the officials won't even have a whistle because they don't know where the football is. So remember that, coaches, that if the officials don't see the football, they cannot blow the whistle, because if they blow the whistle without seeing the football, they're guessing on whether that player is down by rule. So there's some plays where there's going to be a big pile up and there's no whistle, but that's not a license to go and pick people off the pile and go smash people after the play is over. And again, I'll just emphasize it. Coaches and players have done an awesome job of adjusting this on this, but make sure we don't lose progress. Let's keep up the good work, and officials stay diligent on this, especially when the play is coming to an end near piles, etc., to make sure that we're not having anything extremely late and so forth. If it's really, really late, that's an unsportsmanlike conduct foul. Um, we can't have that in our game. It needs to be eliminated. And coaches, players, awesome job. Keep it up. But officials, stay diligent. Let's stay on top of these types of actions. Each player shall wear a jersey that is unaltered from the manufacturer's original design and production, and which shall be long enough to reach the top of the pants and shall be tucked in if longer. The jersey must completely cover the shoulder pads and all pads worn above the waist on the torso. This is in addition to rules that require undershirts to be tucked in and other items of the body to be covered appropriately by rule, and also in addition to clear and contrasting language that will be discussed in a later slide. We continue to see issues with illegal equipment across the country. As you saw, it's a point of emphasis from the NFHS, but we're also seeing these issues in Minnesota as well. Eye shields that are not constructed of a molded rigid material or not clear without the presence of any tint are illegal. Doctor's notes may not supersede this rule. In addition, we are seeing visors or eye shields that have mirror-like qualities, and those are not legal either. You're going to start seeing visors or eye shields at other levels of play that are being approved that would not meet the rule at the NFHS or high school level. So coaches, please work with your players on this. Officials will not allow for any exceptions. Players who have eye shields that do not meet this rule will not be allowed to play. Play cards may not be worn on the waist or on a belt. Um, we tried to get this rule change, didn't work out. So at this time, play cards must be worn on the wrist or arm. And then, as talked about earlier, required equipment must be worn properly, and illegal equipment cannot be worn at all. And if so, players need to be removed from the game for at least one down or more until they can make it legal. So it is really helpful if coaches address these items with players before the season and before games. Officials be on top of this during pregame and work with the coaches to address as the game progresses. This slide has been in the online rules module for more than 10 years. Um, Unfortunately, we continue to see issues with some of the items on the screen. Now, the one that's identified is the shoulder pad that is clearly protruding from the jersey, and the jersey cannot cover that shoulder pad. And we're not talking about extensions from the shoulder pads, we're talking about the shoulder pad itself needs to be covered by the jersey. If not, it's completely illegal and a player can't play with that. In addition, on this slide, you see that we have um, the player with the football has a dark jersey as the home team, which is fine and expected. However, the number is a dark color as well. So this is not a legal jersey for that reason also. In addition, you'll see that the opponent is wearing a white jersey, which is required, expected for the visiting team, but they also have white numbers. The trim does not help with the clear and contrasting rule. So the visiting team's jerseys are illegal also. So um, make sure we're on top of this, but the focus of this particular slide is the fact that Pads need to be covered by the jersey, and we're talking about the shoulder pad itself. And similar to the last slide, this slide has also been in the rules module for over 10 years. And the reason that it's been here is because we continue to see issues with this. You see the player on the left has his back pad that's uncovered. The player on the right has knees that are not covered by pants or knee pads to start the play. So these are all things that we can address with players before the season, but also, as the game is going, officials, if if it becomes illegal through play, fine, ask them to fix it once the play is over. But we can't start plays like this where we're clearly not in compliance with the rule. We need to have them sit out for a play, send them out. If they can fix it, then they can come back. And we're not very consistent with this, both as coaches and officials. So we're asking that coaches and officials work together to address this to the best of their ability this year. The league has provided the following additional guidelines for uniforms. The colors in column A are the expected colors for the home team jersey. They are considered dark. The colors in column B are considered light. When applying this guideline to football, activities directors and coaches must understand how this works. The home team uniform jersey color must come from column A. The number on that uniform must come from column B, with white being the recommended color for maximum visibility. If you are the visiting team, you must wear a white jersey and the number on the uniform must come from column A. So you must have a dark color as the home team with a color of the number from B, and the visiting team must have white jerseys with a color of the number from column A, and trim around the number does not assist in clear and contrasting. In addition, you may not use colors from the same color family. So for example, if you have a royal blue or navy blue jersey as the home team, you may not use light blue as the color of the numbers. So again, our strongest recommendation to meet this rule is to have a color from column A for the home team and white numbers, and then the visiting team has white jerseys with a color from column A for the color of the number. Please visit with your activities director, coaches, to ensure compliance. Officials, if a team is not compliant, then you shall fill out a contest report to notify the league so it can be addressed. This situation was talked about earlier, but if it's hot and humid, officials can and are encouraged to declare water breaks. You don't need agreement from coaches, but they should be notified ahead of the game if the need for a water break is anticipated, and certainly encouraged to try to take these breaks at natural breaks, such as a change of possession or after scores. This is a reminder of the running time or mercy rule language that is in place for high school football in Minnesota. When we have a 35-point differential in the fourth quarter, we will have running time, and the clock will only stop for tips, which is timeouts, injuries, penalties, and scores. If we have a change of possession, we will not stop the clock. The clock will continue to run. So we continue to see issues with this, probably because many teams or officials do not experience this either in a given year or over a period of several years. But just a reminder that that is how this rule works. In addition, coaches and officials cannot agree to apply running time earlier in the game. What we can do as coaches and with the work with the referee, we can go to a adjusted time for a quarter. So for example, coaches, you can agree to shorten the third quarter to say 2 minutes. And then when that is over, go to the fourth quarter and now we can have running time. So we can do that, but what we can't do is say, you know what, it's 35 to nothing in the second quarter and we want to go to running time. So just be aware of that. Be aware of the expectations, and coaches, please share this with your game clock operators so they're aware, and then officials, make sure that you are working with coaches and game clock operators so that we're on the same page. Here's some feedback from the Coaches Association and advisory committees relative to working with coaches. So officials, in particular officials working on the line of scrimmage, it is a reminder that the only person that is giving feedback to the officials is the head coach, and they are responsible for the behavior of the bench area. So head coaches, be aware that if behavior is not meeting the expectations, that you are subject to being flagged. And that includes if one of your assistants or a non-player or a statistician or any of those types of folks wants to get involved in the officiating. The head coach is responsible for the behavior in the bench. So head coaches, we need to take care of that, and the Coaches Association and Advisory Committee supports that. Assistant coaches, you need to work through your head coach, and head coaches need to be at the pregame conference or meeting with the crew to be the one that is providing communication to the crew during the game. So just pointing out that the Coaches Association and the Coaches Advisory Committee are very supportive of proper behavior on the sideline and the chain of communication flowing through the head coach. We have not had a official warning system in place for football in the past, but we are now implementing that similar to other sports like basketball, soccer, and lacrosse. We've done it like this in the past for football, but now we're going to have an official process. So if coaches continue to show disregard for the team box by being out on the field of play or down by the goal line, the officials will stop the game. They will throw a flag. The referee and the line of scrimmage official will notify the head coach that you have been officially warned. And officials, you need to record the warning on your game card. This would include the time of the warning and the team coach. And after this point, there will be no further warnings. Any other additional behaviors or disregard for the team box or disrespect will result in an unsportsmanlike conduct flag. And reminder that two unsportsmanlike conduct flags results in ejection. Now, if a behavior is totally egregious, like a coach goes out into the middle of the field, is yelling profanities, etc., that is not a warning. That is an unsportsmanlike conduct flag at a minimum, and if really egregious, it would be ejection on the first occurrence. Once a coach has received a flag for unsportsmanlike conduct, there are no further warnings. That flag serves as the warning, and another flag shall be thrown if there are further issues, and this will result in ejection. Remember that there is no tolerance for profanity, and no warning will be given in that situation. The official will go directly to an unsportsmanlike conduct flag. Coaches, as you know, we don't have as many officials in a number of sports, including football, as we would like, and there are critical shortages in some areas of the state. We ask you to consider what you're doing to help or hurt this issue. Are you making it appealing for your players to become officials someday? Or are you behaving as though officials are the adversary or rival? How many of your program's players have become officials? We need today's current players to help fill the future shortage, so that's important that they view the official as an individual who is treated with respect. As discussed earlier, please be reminded that high school football is an education-based program. Abusive language and aggressive or negative coach behavior is not part of the education-based philosophy and will be penalized. It is not tolerated during the school day and should not be tolerated during a football game. Expect that there will be some calls that you don't agree with, and please model positive behavior for your players, even if a call does not go your way. You are a key role model for your players. Your job is to coach the players, not to coach the official. If you have serious concerns, bring them to your AD after the game. Constant yelling or comments at the official does not make the situation better. Let's cover a few administrative reminders before concluding this module. The NFHS has a new platform for accessing publications in an online format. This new platform is called NFHS Digital. You can go to nfhs.org/nfhsdigital to learn more about this program and this platform. This platform allows rules books, case books, and other publications to be searched in a digital format using the NFHS Digital app. To access these publications via the app, you must go to the App Store or Google Play to download the NFHS Digital app for free. Please note that you must purchase rules books, case books, or other publications within the app, and they typically are $6.99. This app allows the rules books to be searchable, and you can make notes and come back to it at a later time. Again, go to the App Store or Google Play to download the NFHS Digital app for free, and then purchase any publication you would like to use in a digital format through the app. The NFHS Learning Center is home to more than 100 online professional development courses for everyone within the interscholastic community, including coaches, students, officials, parents, and administrators. More than 70 of these courses are available for free. Go to nfhslearn.com to register your account and to learn more about these courses. Over 21 million courses have been delivered via the nfhslearn.com platform, including many courses that are important to the stakeholders of Minnesota high school athletics and activities. Again, go to nfhslearn.com to register your account and to learn more about the courses that are available. As we mentioned previously, there are a number of courses on nfhslearn.com that are important to coaches and their work with student athletes throughout the season. And these include concussion in sports, heat illness prevention, and sudden cardiac arrest. Unfortunately, we've seen issues with all three of those things and more. And so again, just really important for coaches to be aware of resources that are out there, and many of them available again on nfhslearn.com. The 2025 football coordinator staff includes Mike Graff, who will cover southeastern Minnesota, Rich Stolp, the southwestern part of the state, Bill Mills, west central, Steve Fillion, northwest, Paul McDonald, northeast, and Mike Cannon will cover the central part of the state. Mike Spanier of Maple Grove is the state coordinator and the regional coordinator for the metro area. Please contact your regional coordinator with any questions in regards to rules, officiating mechanics, or officiating in general. Their contact information is located on the coach's dashboard and on the Arbiter Central Hub page. Officials, please contact an experienced official, one of your association leaders, or a coordinator when you have questions. Please refrain from calling or emailing Pam at the league office to ask questions if you have not contacted a coordinator or association leader first. It really assists with workflow and assisting with Pam in getting information and materials to officials in an efficient manner.